So, hello everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. This event is always so well attended, and we hope that you get a lot out of the content of today's presentation. For many of you, this is the beginning of your application journey, and the development of your personal statement and resume will be a very important part of your process. I'm very glad that you've chosen to join us today. Before we fully get into the event, we'd like to thank our sponsors. This event is sponsored by the National Board of Certification and Recertification for Nurse Anesthetists and the American Nurses Association. So welcome everyone. My name is Livia Sutton. I am the chair of the Diversity CRNA Personal Statement and Resume Review Committee. I am an alumni of the Nurse Anesthesia Program at the University of Pennsylvania. I've been a CRNA in practice for over 15 years, and I primarily practice at level 1 trauma centers in the Philadelphia area and in Northern California. I recently began a new professional journey, and I'm currently a student again. I'm enrolled in the PhD program at the University of Pennsylvania, and I just finished my first year. My research interests include structural determinants of health and the health-related outcomes for folks living in under-resourced communities of color. And I hope to engage in interdisciplinary research that can inform health policy and advance health equity. But bringing us back to why we're all here, today's presentation was developed through a collaborative effort with input from Dr. Lena Gould, members of Diversity CRNA, and of course, the review committee members. Dr. Gould is with us here today, and she has a few words to share with all of you.
Thank you so much, Livia, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I know today is a very important day. We want all of you to be prepared for the admission process for nurse anesthesia program. We want you to optimize your personal statement. Today, this presentation is just for you, and hopefully you'll be able to use our free services as a result of what we do. But please stay in touch with us. I'm not gonna stay on long, but I just wanted to welcome all of you. There's a lot of information that you will gain from this. Thank you so much, Livia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gould. So we also have a few members of our committee with us on the call. They will be here moderating the chat. So we have Dr. Max Bader and Dr. Amber Coleman. The full review committee actually includes about 30 CRNAs, and I'd like to make sure that we have a moment to showcase them before we get started. The review committee is a wonderful group of CRNAs who reside and work across the country. These CRNAs volunteer their time, and they have reviewed documents for hundreds of nurses who have come to Diversity CRNA for support. We work and live all across the United States, and we have a wide variety of professional experiences. We're all very committed to mentorship, and we appreciate the work that we get to do in support of you. Collectively, our committee has supported hundreds of applicants, and now I'd like you to hear from just a few folks who have used the personal statement and resume review services and other free services offered by Diversity CRNA. We hope that their stories inspire you to keep working toward your goal, validate your choice to be here with us today, and encourage you to seek out and lean on the resources that are available to you.
Hi, my name is Maya Williams. I am a member of Diversity CRNA, and I use Diversity CRNA's resources of personal statement and resume review and the mock interviews. So when I found out about these resources, I immediately sent everything that I needed to send and found out my paper was not good at all. It got to the point where I basically had to start all over. And I'm grateful for it because it definitely made me a stronger writer. I highly recommend using these resources of the personal statement and resume review, and definitely the mock interviews. With that being said, I wish everyone good luck in their journey, and please, please, please use these free resources. You will not regret it.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Jesse. I'm a member of Diversity CRNA. I'm a registered nurse. I worked in surgical trauma ICU. Up until joining Diversity CRNA, I think I applied to maybe about 4 schools, and I got rejected from all 4 of them. I joined Diversity CRNA last year. I took advantage of all the different workshops. I did the resume workshop, I did the essay workshop, and I did the mock interview workshop. All were held with Dr. Gould. I submitted my essay and my resume, and Olivia Sutton, she got in contact with me, and she's been so helpful the entire way. She helped me with my essay. She helped me make my essay be probably the best essay I've ever submitted. She has this way of just not telling you what to say, but challenging you for you to come up with the answer yourself. I interviewed at 2 schools after joining Diversity CRNA, and I got into both programs within 2 months after joining the program. Join Diversity CRNA. Go out and do it. Join, guys. Peace.
Hello everyone, my name is Tran. I would like to do this video today to say thank you from my heart and my family to Diversity CRNA program review, personal statement review, interview, mock interview for CRNA school. I applied several school. Initial I get a few rejection, but I'm keep going from talking to Dr. Gu, who asked me to keep going, trying. So I try, and then I finally, couple school accept me in a couple school waitlist. So I decided to school in California. I would like to say thank you to all of you for helping me tremendously. And I wish our community diversity CRNA will grow bigger and bigger, and helping everyone who would like to pursue CRNA dream. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Hi guys, my name is Shalana. I'm here to talk about my experiences with the personal statement and resume review that's offered through Diversity CRNA. I sent my personal statement and my resume and got it reviewed and got back some good feedback. It was sent back in a Word document, and revisions were placed in there in a different color, so it was easy to see exactly what I needed to change. But Ms. Sutton reviewed mine, and she also gave me some suggestions on how I can change some of the wording and verbiage around in my personal statement, and how I could offer tell a little bit about my story a little better. I don't know about you all, but I found it difficult to try to strike a balance with trying to set myself apart and showing who I was as a total human being besides just being a nurse. So I sent in my statement and personal statement and CV and got my feedback, and I'm glad to say that I got 3 interviews and I was accepted on the first round at Case Western Reserve. If you are not a member of Diversity CRNA, I encourage you to do so and take advantage of these free services and the mentorship and networking that's available through Diversity CRNA. So again, thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you as well as future SRNAs and my future colleagues as CRNAs. Bye guys.
So Maya, Jesse, Tran, and Shalana are just a few of the many that we have worked with. And we're so happy that you've joined us for this presentation. And we hope that this is just one of the many ways that you'll engage with all that Diversity CRNA has to offer. Today, I will provide you with an overview and some tips for writing your CV or resume and your personal statement. Please be sure to take notes because there's a lot coming at you today. Our goal is to help you to be prepared, offer relevant information, and submit a flawless competitive application that will get you noticed. At various points throughout today's presentation, I will provide you with some other useful information that I'll call bonus information. And this extra information is all relevant and intended to help you on your journey toward becoming a CRNA. So let's start by talking about the resume or the CV. So is it a resume or is it a CV? You'll find that some schools will ask for a resume while others will ask for a CV. So it's pretty important that you understand the difference. The resume is a brief 1 to 3 page summary of your education and professional experiences. For graduate school applications, it is perfectly reasonable to list additional experiences such as academic achievements, leadership, research, and community service. So I like to call that a resume plus. The CV is a full academic and professional history, and for this reason, they tend to be on the longer side. They're usually as long as you need them to be. There's not really a specific page limit. In many instances, the term CV and resume are used interchangeably, but they're not quite exactly the same. From what I've gathered, many schools are looking for more of a resume plus, and I say this because their application may ask for additional and relevant experience that will support your goal, and they want to see that information. Regardless, if the school asks for a resume or a CV, it's important that you give thought to what you include and be strategic about how you present your experiences. For your resume or CV, we want to make sure that you understand all of the nuts and bolts. And so we have a really wonderful presentation that will play for you in just a moment. But just going over the basics, when you build your CV, it's important that you consider the three components, and they are the layout, content, and the accuracy. The layout is evaluated by considering how simple it is to read, and it should be pretty easy to follow. Use a clear font, and we suggest that you just use 1 to 2 font styles and 1 to 2 colors. The content should be informative, but not too long, and you should have it reviewed and edited using strong adverbs to level up the descriptions that you provide. The accuracy of your resume is important because what you share should be a true reflection of your skills and abilities. Any information that appears in your CV is fair game for to be asked about in an interview, so be accurate. And accuracy also gets at the idea of making sure that you've avoided grammatical and spelling errors in your resume or CV. So now that we've gone over just the layout, content, and accuracy, those are the core components, let's get further into building the document. And I'm pleased to share that a CRNA colleague and fellow member of the Diversity CRNA Review Committee has prepared some exciting content for you all today. Dr. Riley Apodaca is a CRNA in practice, and she is passionate about anything that she does. Having worked with her on the review committee for quite some time now, I've come to view her as our resident expert for strategic CRNA writing, strategic CV writing. And her contribution to this presentation is so valuable. The content is pre-recorded, but please remember to take notes because she has a lot of information packed in.
What's up, guys? You guys have covered the basics, and now we're going to dive in. My name is Dr. Riley Apodaca, and I am a CRNA. Building a CV is easily my favorite part of an application. Take the time to build a CV and share more information about yourself professionally and personally. If you've done any type of Google search on how to format a CV, you're probably overwhelmed with the sheer amount of information that a CV contains. And that's why I really appreciate Levia referring to this as a resume plus. But if you've heard me on my CV rant before, I always say trash the one-page resume. And I mean it. I will say that building a CV is going to take some time. However, this is something that you're going to build on to even as your career as a nurse anesthesiologist. I love building CVs because it's really a way to show everything great and grand about you. But you have to be strategic. Let's start with the basics. Your name should be big and bold on top of the page. Make it the biggest font that you can without it falling onto the second line. And all this information needs to be included in the header. Make sure that your credentials follow your name, and please make sure that your credentials are in the proper order. Your contact information and location should fall below your name. Instead of a full address, put your city and your state. And like I said, all this information should be in the header. And what that does, it now puts your name on every single page. This is a continuous name drop as you scroll through your CV. A main thing with having a CV is categorization. You should have a bare minimum of 6 categories on your CV. Truthfully, closer to 10 to 12. I know you're probably asking, what kind of categories are we talking about? Education, additional courses taken, professional experience, education experience, presentations, awards, scholarships, licenses, certifications, volunteer experience, research experience, publications, projects, the list can go on, and I'm going to touch on a few of them. Your CV should be in order from your strongest, most relevant point to your weakest, least relevant. For example, if your GPA is a 1.7, your education probably shouldn't be the first thing that's noted on your CV. Generally speaking, you're always going to start off with your education and or professional experience, whatever is a stronger point for you, and you're going to end with your volunteer experience, licenses and certification, and your references. However, everything in between that is up for grabs. Move it around and play with it strategically. A couple of things to note as we work through a CV. Be strategic with what you bold. Quantify your bullet points, and we'll talk more about that. Be accurate. And I want you guys to start thinking about the quality or skill that you're trying to portray when explaining something in your CV and how that's going to be useful in the nurse anesthesiology profession. If it has absolutely no relevance, don't take a half a page explaining it. I'm going to go through some potential categories and give some important points. First off, education. Please state your degree correctly. You have a bachelor degree, not a bachelor's. Include your GPA, but only if it's above a 3.4. Make sure that you include the university that you attended and the year that you graduated. If you've taken any additional courses on your journey to graduate school, make sure you include that as a category in your CV. Name all the courses that you've taken, separated by commas, and calculate a cumulative GPA of all the courses taken. Your clinical experience. This is a dense one, stick with me. The type of ICU nurse that you are should be the first thing that they see, and it should be in bold. For the bullet points, you get 3 to 5 descriptor bullet points per job. If you've had only one job as an ICU nurse, you can get 5 to 7 bullet points. Bullet points can contain multiple sentences. For my travel nurses who have worked in various assignments, multiple specialties, I'm coming back to you. But here's the biggie regardless, listen up. Do not spend 3 to 7 bullet points telling me what I already know that you do as an ICU nurse. Know your audience. All of the CRNAs that are reviewing your application were once ICU nurses themselves. Off rip, they already know what you do. Trash spending time telling me what I already know every ICU nurse does. Managing critical patients, the titrating drips, the managing ventilators, that comes standard with every ICU nurse. These bullet points should describe what you do above and beyond the average ICU nurse. And there should be a focus on skills that you have that are applicable in the anesthesia realm. For example, strict fluid management, independent ventilator management, blood gas interpretation, code response, positioning, trauma response, and rapid infuser use. Think ultrasound guided line placement, PIV placement, use of the train of 4, and the list goes on. Remember, a CRNA program doesn't care that you know how to manage a kangaroo pump. I hope I haven't lost you yet. Stick with me. Here's the biggie. You have to quantify your experience. Instead of saying proficient in the management of ventilators, say independently managed over 350 ventilated patients in a 2-year period. This now puts a quantified number to your expertise. This is crucial. Think about it. Quantifying your experience sets you, the nurse that works at a level 1 trauma center caring for 2 ventilated patients a shift, apart from the ICU nurse who works at a community hospital caring for 2 ventilated patients a week. But I wouldn't know the difference unless you quantified this. In 98% of CVs, nurses seem to have the same exact bullet points or the same exact job descriptors, even though there's varying levels of skill. And the quantifications of your skills should be utilized in each of those bullet points. Discuss the number of codes that you've responded to, peripheral IVs that you've placed, ultrasound guided IVs that you've placed, the number of open craniotomies that you've taken, the amount of times that you've managed a certain device. List really goes on. And you're probably asking, where do I get these numbers? They're approximates, but they should be accurate and they should reflect your skill. For my newer nurses and those that are just moving into a new position, start tracking these numbers. Avoid passive language when discussing your clinical work. These bullet points are not a time to tell me how well that you follow physician's orders. This is the time to tell me that you're an independent nurse that can think through complex patient issues. Your CV should go back roughly 10 years. Remove any information that is completely irrelevant. For jobs that are not healthcare related, but maybe in the past 10 years, utilize 1 to 2 bullet points to explain or highlight skills that could be relevant in anesthesia. For example, if you were an executive chef at a restaurant, little relevance to anesthesia. However, the fact that you could create 300 dishes in a 4-hour period working with 2 other chefs may show that your ability to work well under pressure and to have high production. Those are relevant skills. Next is shadowing experience. Make sure to include this in a CV. Note the facility that you shadowed at, the month and the year that you shadowed, how many hours you shadowed, and note the cases that you saw. For example, a tonsillectomy or a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. And on that note, make sure that you are writing out all abbreviations. Using abbreviations throughout a CV is not appropriate. Leadership roles. Make sure to discuss the roles where you've been a leader. And this doesn't have to be confined to the hospital. Drop a quantified bullet point that describes your leadership skill and the impact that you have within that organization. Professional enrichment is next. This includes courses and classes towards critical care concepts. Emphasis on things that could be useful in anesthesia, such as a course on moderate sedation. Awards and scholarships. Make sure to highlight your accomplishments. If there's an accomplishment that you want to highlight a little bit further, I typically put it underneath a professional achievements category and I drop a bullet point explaining it in greater detail. Next is languages. People typically forget this one. Do not mention that you speak English. That comes standard with your application. However, if you're bilingual, you speak Spanish, German, make sure that you mention that and note your proficiency level as well. Your licenses and certifications. A lot of people like to put this at the top of their CV. Don't. This should be the second to last thing on your CV. Most applicants have the exact same licenses and certifications. It rarely, if ever, stands out. Consider moving this category higher up in your CV only if you have certifications that may be unique. Organizational involvement is another category. This involves your work on committees, and don't forget your work in diversity and nurse anesthesia mentorship program. Make sure that when you're discussing committees or organizations that you're using the full formal name. Things like your involvement in diversity CRNA, you're gonna wanna expand on. Drop a bullet point. Describe what you've gained from your membership. And think about it. It sets you apart from other candidates that may not have a membership in this type of organization. And again, quantify your involvement. For example, attended a 6-hour hands-on simulation experience gaining knowledge on direct laryngoscopies, epidurals, and regional blocks. Another category is research involvement. This is huge. You are moving into a DMP or a doctoral level program, and regardless of where you go, it's going to have an aspect that includes evidence-based practice and research. Discussing your research projects that you've worked on or played a role in is a huge selling point. Publications. Same thing as research involvement. Including articles that you published or co-authored is very important to note. Another one is projects. Think about projects that you've worked on that have made an impact at your organization. Presentations. These can be formal and informal. For example, I trained over 15 nurses in the care of pediatric postoperative patients. While this was not a formal presentation in a boardroom, I did give an informal presentation to each nurse. So I include this in my presentations category of my CV. Volunteer experience, don't forget it. Put this towards the end of your CV, right above your references. The reason it falls towards the end is, although it's a strong point, it's not very relevant, but it does speak about you personally, and definitely worth mentioning. Remember, I should get a good idea of who you are, not only inside the hospital, but outside as well. Include your role, the organization that you worked with, and don't forget to drop a quantified bullet point discussing what you did. And remember, potentially note a skill that, again, could be useful in anesthesia. For example, maybe you volunteered in a soup kitchen. Don't just drop a bullet point and tell me that you volunteered in a soup kitchen and gave meals to homeless people. Instead, tell me that you facilitated 10 volunteers to serve over 400 meals in a 2-hour period. This notes your efficiency and ability to work in a team. References. This should be the very last thing on your CV. I recommend name dropping at least 3 people. I recommend at least one be a CRNA and the other 2 to be people that could speak to your clinical experience. Maybe a manager or a charge nurse. Include their name, proper credentials, email, and phone number. And back to my travel nurses, I didn't forget about you. I could show you better than I could tell you. And here is an example of a CV from a travel nurse that I work with. I want you to take note of the fact that we highlighted all the various specialties that she worked in. I also worked diligently to put 5 bullet points together that combined all of her experience. And don't forget, it's quantified. I know you guys probably have a lot of questions, but this presentation was about tackling the basics, scraping the surface. Before I wrap it up, we're gonna touch on a few more general tips and do's and don'ts. Don't try to shove everything on 1 page. Don't even try to shove it on 2. Please get information out of the margins of the page. Get comfortable with the fact that your CV can range somewhere between 3 and 6 pages. Ditch the fonts, the various colors, and use basic fonts like Times New Roman, Georgia, and Calibri. Please proofread your CV. Personally, I keep my CV on my desktop and I open and review it frequently. The format needs to be flawless, down to the spacing. Humble opinion, ditch the objective statements. It's a waste of space. I already know what your objective is. Just jump right in. Don't include your picture. Remove all hyperlinks. Do not highlight or color words. I like to keep my entire CV in past tense, even my current jobs. And utilize strong adverbs in your bullet points. I'm gonna drop some resources that you guys can potentially use, and this is just to help you avoid repetitive language. Be accurate, don't fake the funk. Remember that everything you mention in your CV is up for grabs during an interview. And last but not least, whenever you submit a CV, whether it's to CRNA school or a potential employer, please make sure it's in PDF format. If you plan on bringing a hard copy of your CV to an interview, put it on resume paper. I know it's difficult to find information on how to build a CV as an RN, so I really pride myself on teaching people how to tailor a CV to their professional nursing experience. Last but not least, I want to scroll through my own CV. All the advice that I give, I follow myself. And I'd like to note that I've continued to build on the CV that I utilized when I applied to CRNA school. I hope you guys find this helpful, and I look forward to meeting you guys at a future diversity event. See ya.
So, as always, excellent presentation by Dr. Apodaca. Let's review some of what she covered. So let's take a look at some of the key information that Riley provided to us about the layout of your CV. So she mentioned using the header. So that just involves clicking in the top of your Word document or Google Doc And using the header allows you to put your name and credentials and your contact information all at the top and on every page of your CV or resume. Listing your correct credentials in the correct order can get confusing, so I'll go over that here. List your credentials in this order after your full name. It'll be your highest earned degree, and for many of you, this will be the BSN. Your licensure would come next, so that is your RN. Then any state designations or requirements such as the APRN can follow. And after that, you list your national certifications such as CCRN or CMC. More information about the standard order for professional credentials for nurses can be found on the website for the ANCC, which is the American Nurses Credentialing Center, or the AANA, which is the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiologists websites. Here we see a list of CV categories that were discussed, and generally speaking, the CRNA, I keep saying CRNA, the categories can fall in this order, but remember that you really want to adjust them according to what is your strongest to weakest characteristics. So taking a closer look at a few of the CV categories, starting with education, be sure to include your degree. Many of you here have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Regarding your GPA, as Riley mentioned, we recommend listing it if it's above a 3.4. Remember, the goal is to highlight your strengths. So if you have a high GPA, definitely list it on your CV. Regardless, your official transcripts will share your grades. Also remember, if you've taken additional courses, list them along with a cumulative GPA. Under professional experience, be sure that anyone who is reviewing your CV can easily spot what type of ICU you've worked in. So I'm reiterating that here because it's something that I often see as I review resumes and CVs, is that I have to go searching to understand what is even the title of the ICU. So make sure that it is bolded and clearly visible in your CV. Quantify your experience. This is one of the biggest takeaways from today's CV presentation. It was noted that when you quantify your experience, it sets you apart from others in the application process. So it's important that your CV gives a clear picture of who you are as a nurse and that you're ready to take this next step. Talking about your shadowing experience, make sure that you give relevant details about your experience. I see this left out often. I want you to remember that it's important to note the facility, the month and the year, the hours and the types of cases. What I don't recommend is name dropping the CRNAs that you shadowed. I don't think that that's necessary. And I bring that up here because that's another thing I've often seen in the resumes I've reviewed. Speaking about presentations, formal or informal, keeping in line with that theme of quantifying your experience, I think it's important that you keep track of all that you do outside of your clinical care of patients. Keeping track of your relevant experience will be helpful when you need to write about it. So formal or informal experience can benefit you if you can make the case for the relevance to your goal. When speaking about volunteer experience, make sure you give descriptors of the goal to show the relevance to your interest in being a nurse anesthetist. Listing a volunteer experience without a description doesn't really serve you. So make sure that you're making that connection in the way that you write it up. As for references, be prepared with at least 3 professional references. They can include a CRNA, a manager, or a peer. I think of it as anyone who can, with relevant credentials, who can speak to your experience in practice, how you work as a member of a team. And when you look at professional development or enrichment, highlight the conferences or workshops that you've attended, list and describe your involvement with an organization such as ours, Diversity and Nurse Anesthesia Mentorship Program. And next, let's take a look at some sample resumes that highlight some of what we talked about. So hopefully this will allow you to pull it all together. So looking at this first sample resume, it offers a great layout and was written into a template. Using a template that utilizes the margins for information will come down to personal preference. My suggestion is that you would avoid your resume or your CV appearing overly busy, regardless of what format or template you choose. In this particular resume, we see that the education and other relevant information fall within the left-hand column, while pertinent information is in the body of the resume. This layout gives great visibility and makes for an easy to read resume. But given what we just learned, let's try for a quick critique of this document. Go ahead and drop in the chat some things that you think are really great about this resume and some things that you think could be better. Okay, so I'm seeing some notes about getting rid of the picture, not using the margins. ICU experiences are bolded, yep. Remove the color, okay. Leadership is provided, great. Yeah, it's nice to see that you guys are pulling those items together to critique this resume. Nice. So, if I were to critique this resume, let's just start at the top. This nurse opted to start the resume with a professional profile section instead of an objective. And in that section, a few character and professional traits are offered. This section is optional, especially if you find yourself running out of space and need to include more relevant information. Also, we see that this nurse chose to offer a skills highlight section. This is useful, particularly if you have an extensive background in ICU, where you have repeated experiences across sites. So this individual provided us with a different example of how nurses can choose to list their critical care experience all together in one place, which will help you to avoid redundant information in your CV. And if I were to highlight specifically an area of critique for this resume, it would be that the clinical experiences are not very well quantified at all. Professional development and community service section, I noticed that there aren't any specific information or details listed that would allow me to connect it to the overall interest in the program. And so it's important that you take every opportunity to highlight your experiences and connect them to your goal of admission to a CRNA program. So looking at this additional example, here we see a resume that was written using a standard word processing program. There was no pre-formatted template used, and this resume is still an excellent start. This nurse opted for a professional summary section in which personal and professional characteristics are listed, and the goal, and they connected that to the goal for admission to a specific nurse anesthesia program. But remember, this section is optional. Given the context in which this CV is to be reviewed, the admissions committee already knows your objective. The credentials here are listed appropriately, and I highlight that because that is another one of the things that I often see when I review resumes is that people are often flipping RN and BSN, and in the end of the day, it's not a huge deal, but it's nice that you can present your resume in a consistent format with what the larger credentialing bodies have acknowledged as the correct order. Both of the examples that we've seen today clearly list the type of ICU that they've practiced in. The headings, fonts, and formats are consistent, making it easy to read and review. And in this example, the licensure and certification section does appear higher up in the CV. And I'd say for this resume or CV, it's okay because as you notice, this individual has several certifications, and that may not be the case for other nurses applying to the same program. So when you think about being strategic about where you are positioning each of the categories of your resume, it's important that, if you do have a ton of certifications, that it makes sense to have that higher up. So you're welcome to offer your critique of this resume in the chat if you so choose. Take a moment, look through it, and see what you think. All right, I'm waiting to see if anybody's going to respond, but while you're thinking about what you would say, I'll go ahead with what I would point out. And it brings us back to that main theme of quantifying the experience. There it is again. We sort of can't say it enough. By the end of today, you'll be thinking about tracking your experiences so that you can easily write about just how much you have done over time. And the one other critique I would note is this person could have given more detailed information about the diversity CRNA workshop, giving quantified information about that experience. This person should also, for their CRNA shadowing, offer some information about the facility and the types of anesthetics that will help to just allow some context around the shadowing experiences to be provided. All right, I do see some responses, so let me scroll through. Spelling errors, shadow experience is not quantified. Great, no leadership experience, a lot of acronyms, narrow margins. Okay. All right, great. So moving on to some final tips for building your CV, it's important that you avoid abbreviations. For example, use advanced cardiac life support instead of ACLS. Use basic fonts such as Georgia, Times New Roman, or Calibri. Use strong adverbs. And what we mean by that is just choosing words that really level up the descriptions that you're offering about your experience. So some examples are designed and implemented, or facilitated and evaluated, and the list can go on. You can even do a simple Google search for strong adverbs for a CV, and that'll get you to some good resources. Submit your CV in PDF format, and a hard copy could be put on a resume. And we recommend PDF format because, as you may know, it really does freeze the image the way you want it to be, as opposed to sending it as a Word document. Can, depending on the device and the software, things can get shifted around and your resume may not present the way you intended it to. And we can't say this enough, make sure you proofread and avoid spelling and grammatical errors before you submit it with your application. So be strategic, be accurate, and quantify your experience. Be intentional about what you highlight in your CV. Where you position experiences within the document matters, considering that items toward the end of your resume might possibly get glossed over. Generally speaking, the content of your CV will begin with your education and work experience, and it will end with your volunteer work, licenses and certifications, and references. All of the other categories that you list can be shifted around depending on your strong points and what is most relevant to your goal. Be accurate, this goes without saying. Check your spelling, take care of those red squiggly lines before they show up someplace else. Make sure that your dates make sense. Describe your experiences in a way that is accurate. And remember, anything that you write is fair game in an interview. And I mentioned making sure that the dates make sense. I bring that up because thinking about the fact that anyone looking at your resume or CV is also reading your personal statement, make sure that what you're listing in your resume in the order that you've listed it tracks well with how you've written about it in your personal statement. We talk about quantifying your experiences. I did see a note in the chat regarding that. We're just saying sharing numbers can set you apart from other applicants. So start keeping track of what you do each day and each week. Okay, so now we have reached a moment where I have some other additional information we'd like to share with you. It's our relevant bonus information. So when you start to organize and plan, it's important that you are mindful of application deadlines. Not all schools have the same application deadlines. Keep track of the varying dates and organize yourself to meet those deadlines. Don't wait until the last minute to send your documents. Give yourself a 2 to 3 month lead time. So I oftentimes set a deadline ahead of a deadline for myself to meet, and then I work backwards. So it's just been a helpful way to really stay on track. When you think about having to get letters of recommendation from various individuals, which is a standard requirement, that can take time. So plan ahead and follow up with those who have agreed to submit a letter on your behalf. Give yourself time that you need to prepare for and take the GRE. But side note, many nurse anesthesia programs don't require that you take the GRE. But if one does if a school that you're interested in does require the GRE, you have to factor that into your time frame. Plan accordingly and familiarize yourself with Nursing CAS. This is a centralized service for applying to nursing schools. You'll have to create an account and understand the associated fees and timeframes for submitting documents and test scores. You can find out if a nurse anesthesia program uses Nursing CAS by going through the school's website. And there'll be a bit more on the importance of navigating the websites of nurse anesthesia programs a little bit later. So it's time to move on to talking about preparing to write the personal statement. And so for some folks, this may cause even a little bit more anxiety, but I'm here to assure you that you can do it. So why do schools ask for a personal statement or purpose statement? Well, this is your opportunity to paint a picture of yourself as you exist beyond your transcripts, CV, and test scores. This is the part of the application process where you get to tell your story. It's your opportunity to shine and relate your life experiences to your professional goals. I like to think of the personal statement in the context of these essential elements. You'll showcase your experiences, describe your qualifications, highlight your goals, and you'll do this all while demonstrating your ability to communicate through your writing. Okay, so where do you start? First thing you need to do is plan and be strategic. Know your audience. This goes across the board for writing. Ask yourself, who are you writing to? What do you know about them? To answer those questions, you'll need to do some research. Reflect on why you are writing. Keep the purpose central. Read the word prompt carefully, deconstruct it, and identify what they are asking for. Then build an outline based on that word prompt. That's how you start. Let's take a look at a few word prompts that I pulled from various schools recently. So in the first word prompt, it says write a 500-word statement describing your area of practice interests, career goals, and reasons for desiring doctoral study. The second one in the center is describe why you want to receive a Doctor of Nursing practice degree with a nurse anesthesia specialty, what motivated you to seek nurse anesthesia as a specialty, and what your plans are following your education. And the last one is write a 3-page double-spaced personal statement stating your career goals and future contributions to the profession of nurse anesthesia. So when you read a word prompt, read it again and maybe even once more. You'll need to identify what the program is asking from you. You'll build your outline for your writing from the word prompt. This gives you an organized starting point for your writing. Use the word prompt to your advantage. The schools are asking you for what they want to hear, so let the word prompt guide the organization of your personal statement. The words in color here are the words that I would use if I were responding to these word prompts to get organized, to prepare to write a response to these prompts. Organizing your writing is especially important when you are faced with a limited maximum word count. So the word count limits are in place for a reason. And I've had people come to me and say, 350 words is too short. How am I ever going to do that? But they put that word count limit in place for a reason. And it's intended to urge you to write in a succinct and precise manner. Starting with an outline is the way that you can get yourself organized, and it gives you a starting point for each of the paragraphs in the body of your essay. Generally speaking, you'll be providing the admissions committee with information about yourself, your goals, your professional experiences, and preparation for a graduate study. You'll also share about your interest in their program and what you hope to contribute to the profession by being a graduate of their program. Next, we'll discuss the basic outline that you see here. However, before we go deeper into building your statement from an outline, let's talk about the importance of spending some time gathering information. As you know, with any and all assigned writing, gathering information is a key part of your preparation and therefore your success. So let's look at some more bonus information. I'd like to share with you a short video that covers the importance of navigating the websites of nurse anesthesia programs. Some of the websites featured in this video have been updated since its creation, but understand that the message put forth in the video still applies. By looking at a few nurse anesthesia program websites, you will be provided with an overview of just how important it is to be very intentional when you're gathering information from the program's websites. This is the Fairfield University Nurse Anesthesia Program website. As you scroll through each program's website, be sure to look at all of the information available to you. Click through the faculty bios. Scroll all the way through looking at facts that they offer, the requirements and curriculum, clinical affiliation sites, accreditations and history, other information that's general to the program, and pay attention to the frequently asked questions section of each website, as there is very important information to be gathered by clicking on each of these tabs and taking note of the information there. This is the Texas Christian University Nurse Anesthesia Program website. This is a great website to demonstrate just how much information is housed within the different tabs on the school's websites. Clicking on the About tab, we find the link to the faculty and staff. It's important that you familiarize yourself with the nurse anesthesia program faculty. Looking at the clinical sites, we see that for this program, the clinical sites are in different states. This is important information to have. For some, this may be seen as a challenge. On the other hand, some may see this as a benefit, as they will have exposure to different regions, different patient populations, a variety of anesthesia professionals, and different cases. Looking at the program's statistics, we see that TCU offers information about their students' NCE first-time pass rate. That's the National Certifying Exam first-time pass rate, as it compares to the national pass rate. The school also goes on to offer information about their program attrition rate over the past few years, as well as average case and procedure numbers obtained by their graduates in past years. The University of Pittsburgh DNP Nurse Anesthesia Program website is highlighted for you here because it is important to recognize that each program may have a different question or word prompt that you are to address in your statement. The program at the University of Pittsburgh asks for applicants to write about their nursing philosophy, reasons for the interest in the area of study, expectations of the DNP program, and career goals. What stands out about the personal statement requirements for this program is that they ask for the applicants to also include their proposed area of interest for the DNP project. It is important to note this because you may find that more programs are asking for you to identify your proposed doctoral project. As you prepare to write your personal statements, be sure to know exactly what each school is asking for and address these prompts accordingly in your essay. Okay, so I hope you found that video informative. As you begin to make choices about what schools you will apply to, please appreciate all of the information that is available to you on each of the school's websites. Now let's look at this basic outline. It's a good starting point for several of the word prompts that you'll encounter. Also, some schools don't provide a specific word prompt and instead simply ask for a personal statement to be written within a word or character limit. So in that case, this outline is a great way to get started. The outline starts with an introduction, followed by the big question, why do you want to be a CRNA? What have you done to prepare? Why are you interested in that particular program? And you'd end with a conclusion. Next, we'll look at each of these sections one by one. So the introduction is your beginning, it's your hook. This is when you'll capture your audience. It's important that you write with a confident tone and include information that sets the stage for the remainder of your statement. The introduction is an overview. It should be relevant and concise. Next is the big one. Why do you want to be a nurse anesthetist? And you'll need to clearly articulate why you want to be a CRNA. This question shows up in many forms. And let's consider the word prompt examples we saw earlier. Recall that one school asked for you to describe what motivated you to seek nurse anesthesia as a specialty, while the other asked for a description of your career goals. Taken in context, both schools are asking you this question: why do you want to be a CRNA? This can be a challenging question to answer, but this is the one question you really can't stumble through. However, it's important that you prepare to respond to this question. That's how you'll handle it. Spend some time reflecting on what draws you to the profession. Think about the exposure that you've had to nurse anesthetists in practice. Why do you believe that you're an excellent candidate for a nurse anesthesia program? To learn more about CRNAs and the profession, please be sure to spend some time reviewing the content on the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiologists website, also known as the AANA. Take the opportunity to engage with CRNAs, ask them what they love about what they do, seek to understand the profession, and this will help you to understand why you have chosen it for yourself. When you have a deep understanding or connection to something, it's much easier to articulate your thoughts and goals, and therefore writing will come easier too. Next, you discuss your preparation. In your statement, you'll write about your professional journey and preparation for this moment. So everybody has to have critical care experience. So yes, highlight that, but give some life to the notable achievements and experiences that you have had apart from your clinical care of patients. A few questions that I often ask candidates to reflect on are: have you been a leader in an organization? Have you taken on additional roles at your institution that align well with the common characteristics of nurse anesthetists? How have you worked in collaboration with your peers to advance the care of your patients? Describing your approach to critical care nursing in a manner that will set you apart will allow you to be considered as a competitive applicant. Seek to demonstrate how your personal attributes and your experience have prepared you for the rigors of being a student in a nurse anesthesia program. You will have to explain your choice of program as it relates to your career goals. So answering that question of why have you chosen that particular program? Show that you have done your research on their program. Demonstrate that you have considered what they can offer to you as a student. Maybe that's their outstanding faculty. Maybe it's the small class size or the clinical learning opportunities that are unique to that program. Perhaps the school's mission statement aligns well with your professional goals. As you build your network, talking to students who have attended the program that you're interested in is an excellent resource as well. Thinking back to the video about navigating the different schools' websites, go through all of the information available to you, and that'll help you to really understand what the program can offer to you and what you can bring to the program. And as you consider why you want to apply to a particular program, you should really have solid rationales for your choice. Next up, and the final section of your essay, is the conclusion. Overall, your conclusion should be strong, comprehensive, and enthusiastic. Your goal here is to maintain the attention of your audience. You want the admissions committee to choose to move forward with you as a candidate for their program. Depending upon the word prompts provided to you, you may use this portion of your essay to summarize your goals and your confidence in your preparation to enter a rigorous academic program. Or you can write about what you'll offer to them as a student. This can come in the form of discussing your ideas for your doctoral capstone project or your planned contribution to the nurse anesthesiology profession. So let's review some final tips that will support your success. Always remain professional and remember that your audience is a team of professionals reviewing the profiles of many applicants. Highlight your achievements and relate them to your goal. When you mention a hardship, mention that experience within the context of what you have done to grow or overcome that challenge. Always remain professional and remember that your audience is a team of professionals. Answer the questions given to you. If they've asked you for 3 specific questions, generally speaking, each answer will have its own paragraph. Please proofread and then proofread again, and even have someone else read it for you. And that's where our committee will come in, but we'll talk about that later. Don't exceed the word count or page limit, and please get familiar with APA format. So it's important to try to avoid these pitfalls. Don't use slang or cliche statements. Remember, it's professional writing for graduate school, so avoid being too casual or informal. Spell words out in your essay. Do not use acronyms or abbreviations without previously spelling them out. And it's important that you also avoid contractions. That's just keeping within APA format. Check out apps like Grammarly.com, which can help you with grammar and the tone of your essay. Don't state the obvious. Please don't waste your precious word count space telling nurse anesthetists about what they already know. Recall they've all already been critical care nurses, oftentimes for many, many years. Avoid writing in a negative or pessimistic tone, and be sure that the dates and order of your experiences as they appear in your statement don't conflict with what you've already provided in your resume. Moving on to our next section of bonus information, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some challenges that nurses may face when English is not their native language. And we'll also look at a snapshot of some helpful resources, and I have a few comments about the use of AI. So applying to nurse anesthesia programs can be a very laborious process, and it can get quite overwhelming at times. This challenge can become even more difficult when you have different resources and experiences than your peers, and you're also applying to programs, and you're all applying to programs at the same time. So we recognize that as we aim to increase the diversity within this profession, we're looking to have representation from all of the varied cultures and backgrounds that make up the communities that we serve. This sometimes means that applicants will have the added challenge of having English as their non-native language. There are a lot of nurse anesthesia students that have had this challenge and have made efforts to overcome those struggles and successfully meet the rigors of a nurse anesthesia program when they're required to do a significant amount of scholarly writing and create and present a capstone project. So if English is not your primary language and that presents difficulties with your writing, it's our suggestion that prior to entering a nurse anesthesia program, you can take courses that help to strengthen your English writing skills. This doesn't have to be expensive. You can go to your local community college, take courses such as Intro to English, English Lit 1 and 2, or even creative writing. You can also do things like subscribing to nursing journals, as well as something as simple as listening to podcasts in English, which can all help to strengthen your language skills. There are benefits to knowing how to speak, write, and learn more than one language. Research has shown that learning a second language can improve mental awareness, creativity, and empathy for others. And some general recommendations that we offer include seeking ways to strengthen your English writing skills. Please ask for help, increase your vocabulary, practice slowing down and focusing on pronunciation, remember grammar and tone, Practice every chance you get. Listen and ask until you understand, and it's okay for you to speak until you're understood. It's also my suggestion that prior to submitting any scholarly work, once you're accepted, that you use your university writing lab to help you edit your work so that you're submitting the best version of your work for grading. Here we're just looking at a few of the tools and resources that we often point out to folks. So check out Grammarly.com. You can get feedback on your tone and suggestions for grammatical corrections. The Purdue Online Writing Lab is an excellent resource with a ton of information to offer, and it's free. And even the editor feature in Microsoft Word is super simple and useful to use. You can get a lot of information there, so including the word count and the character count. So AI is with us, and AI tools are abundant. It's important that they are used ethically, however. So consider the importance of maintaining the authenticity of your work, avoid plagiarism at all costs, be mindful of privacy, and avoid perpetuating potential biases, and strive for inclusivity in your work. AI such as ChatGPT are tools for guidance, and it's not meant to replace your capacity for independent thinking. So are you ready to get started with your writing? I hope that this presentation helps you all feel empowered to get working on your resumes and personal statements. And please remember that this organization, Diversity CRNA, exists to support you. Earlier, you heard testimonials from Maya, Jesse, Tran, and Shalana. They shared their experiences, and they are just a few of the many who have benefited from our free services. The Diversity CRNA Personal Statement and Resume Review Service is a free service available to you. I'll share with you how you can partner with us for support on your journey. Here's how you can submit your documents to the review committee. First, head on over to diversitycrna.org, then click on the Free Services tab where you can access the Personal Statement and Resume Review Services section of the website. There you'll find information about our review committee and the process for submitting documents to us. The submission form is available from the 1st through the 7th, so that's the time frame to submit. We are currently accepting documents until the 7th of this month. And we offer a critique on the content, organization, and flow of your essay while taking note of whether or not you have adequately addressed the word prompts that were provided to you by the nurse anesthesia program. After your request for review has been received, you'll be matched with a CRNA reviewer who will read your resume and personal statement and provide you with feedback. We offer to have your completed review returned to you prior to the end of the same month, generally speaking. And it's important that you also plan ahead if you think you're going to submit to us. We recommend a 2 to 3 month lead time to submit your documents, because if your application is due in July, for example, it's important that you could submit in May or prior, because if you submitted in June and we got it back to you by the end of June, if your application is due in July, that wouldn't give you enough time to take our critique and use it to your benefit. So I hope that makes sense. We offer this service free of charge, and we've worked with hundreds of nurses just like you. If you have any questions about our committee and this free service, please take a look at the website. Also, remember that Diversity CRNA offers free interview preparation services too. So we're not quite done yet, but we'd like to take a moment to check in with our moderators, Dr. Bader and Dr. Coleman, to see if there are any questions in the chat that we can take some time to address with the group.
I think 2 questions were already answered by Lena in the text. One was about being able to refer back to this recorded video, which I think people will have access to, so they can refer back to some of the videos they saw. And there's a question here about connecting one-on-one with a mentor through Diversity CRNA. One thing I wanted to mention, something that I do is when I'm paired with someone, I'm reading their documents, I do try to follow up with them, and I will invite them to resubmit me back their documents after I've had a chance to critique them. And then I'm also available to answer any questions about CRNA practice or anesthesia school. So yes, it's about support for your CV and personal statement, but it's also just I'm a resource just to kind of explore the profession more and have someone to ask questions about what the experience might be like, or what professional practice is like as a CRNA as well.
Thank you for that, Max.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some time. We can take a few questions. I think you can use the raised hand feature. If anybody has any questions, we'll kind of scroll through and you can unmute and ask. I'm trying to see. I don't have
Hi, I have
access
a
to either.
question.
Okay, hey. I can't see you, but maybe share your name and where you're coming from.
Sure. My name is Kristen. I live in Maryland. I have a question regarding um, upcoming planned events. Like for me, I have an application I'd like to put um, in July. However, I plan to attend one of the diversity CRNA events um, in September. Would that be something I should add onto my resume section or leave it out as I haven't attended yet?
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent question. And so when I am planning to attend an event that I have been confirmed to attend, I put it on my CV and I list it as, anticipated date. You can list the date in the future and just acknowledge it as something that you're going to. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
And if it ever were to come up in an interview, you just explain it exactly the same way that you just explained it here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So there's a person by the name of Ashley with the hand raised. You're next. Feel free to unmute, tell us your city and state, and then you can proceed with your question.
Hi, my name is Ashley Banks. I live in Reno, Nevada. My question is, when it comes to quantifying your experiences on a resume, I'm curious about how to do that in a way that benefits you when you're applying with 1 year of experience. So like the minimum, where maybe it's only been in the last few months that you're taking those higher acuity cases. And like, how do you, and maybe that's just something in the resume where you don't stand out as much, but yeah, how would you quantify if you have more of a minimal amount of experience?
So I see the point. You're wondering if like the quantification would set you apart in a less than positive way. I guess as I'm thinking about that, I'd say um, do it in a way that speaks about the volume week to week and day to day. That might be a good way to offer the admissions committee a view of kind of like I said, the day to day experience, as opposed to looking at doing it over the course of months or years. You can speak about it in that manner. So taking care of, I don't know, I'm making something up here, but 5 to 7 fresh open hearts a week. That sounds reasonable, I think. I used to be CT Does that help answer your question?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ashley. The next person is Ushna. Ushna, feel free to unmute yourself, mention your city and state, and proceed with your question.
Hi, my name is Ushna. I am from Maple Grove in Minnesota. And my question is regarding the research and presentation in writing the resume. Is that something I can include the research that we have done in the school assignment, kind of like that, the presentation also?
Yeah,
Or something
absolutely.
that has been published or something only that need to be mentioned in the resume?
Yeah, I do want to invite either Max or Amber to respond to your question because they're here with us too, and they may have really good insights as well. Do either of you want to take that question?
So it was a question about any like research experience.
Mhm.
I think any experience is good experience. I think even if it was something you worked on as a research project at school, that could also kind of be with you for possible DMP research ideas too. But I think it's worth mentioning, even if it's not published, anything you collaborated with someone on, anything that you worked on that you feel strongly about, I think you should absolutely mention.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much. Yep.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Max. And just, I think we touched on that earlier. When you think about formal and informal experience, as long as you can make it a clear connection to being relevant to your goal, then you should put it on your CV for sure. Okay, so I'm looking through. And Adif Sayo is next. If you'd like to unmute and tell us your city and state. And I do apologize if I haven't pronounced your name correctly.
Hello, how are you, everybody? My name is Ade Fisayo, and you did well. The reason my question today, it kind of goes along with looking to apply like soon, but obviously just joining the program.
Oh, that audio went out. Are you still there, Ade?
Yeah, I think he's muted. I think you muted yourself.
Oh, I muted myself. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
And really, what I want to know is it best to delay the application and go through the program, or to just go ahead and apply and see what happens while going through the program? Because we're talking about a June due date, so it's very soon.
Oh, I guess I need a little clarity on your question. When you say delay application, like tell me more of what you're asking about.
Oh, essentially, like, should I, since I'm just starting the program and the applications are kind of nearing the dead end, the next workshop is in September or somewhere around there. I was wondering, is it possible to just not apply this year and try to put forth like a strong, is it advisable to not apply this year and try to put forth a stronger application after going through the diversity CRNA program and getting every nooks and crannies I might need to make a stronger case for myself?
Yeah, I think I understand your question as it sounds as though you're contemplating if you have enough experience to be competitive.
Right.
And I think that I would say, well, how many years have you been a critical care nurse?
Critical ICU, a year and some change. ED at a level 1 trauma center, last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to, I'll put my email in the chat and we can kind of continue this conversation offline. But first thoughts are, I wouldn't see a reason for you to delay your application. I think you can be in the process of applying and still be planning to, which is what many people do, still join with us at the in-person events that we offer. So, but yeah, let me put my email in the chat. And
Livia, can I say something about that?
Yes, please, Dr. Gould. I forgot you're still here. Yes, please.
Yeah, no. I'm on. The thing is I want you to all realize this, that nurses will sometimes utilize our services, and then later on they're already scheduled for another event, like a couple of months later. So I would definitely stay in the queue as far as getting your application in. Okay. We're going to make sure that your application, your statement will be reviewed, okay? But the thing is that I don't want you to delay your process of getting accepted somewhere. And the thing is, you'll benefit so much from this workshop, and also too with the hands-on and simulation, and also talking to other program directors. You may even find by the time you are accepted and you go to this event that you may hear from another program and say, I want to, you know what, I already have an acceptance in my pocket. I might as well, let me put my application into this program and see if I can get into this one. So, it's totally up to you, but I would advise you to strongly to apply to the program this year. Do not wait another year. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Gould.
Thanks, Dr. Gould. So we have 5 other hands raised, and we'll take those 5 questions. And then we also have a few polls that we'd like to set live for you all. So the next person that is welcome to unmute and ask a question is Nikki Dash.
My camera does not work, so I can't start my video. But I have two short questions. When you talked about informal experience, so if you're out of nursing school for about 4 years, can you list the experiences that you had while a student, like a nurse's aide, worked in the simulation lab, worked at Nordstrom, customer service, diversity?
Yeah, I hear your question. And I guess my first thoughts are, And I would definitely ask Max and Amber, Dr. Gould to kind of weigh in on this too. But I think the biggest idea that I would like to impart on you is just making sure that whatever you're listing is relevant. So you mentioned simulation. That is absolutely relevant. Depending on your role in that space, it's absolutely relevant to list that experience. And the next idea I'll say is just be strategic. So if you can't find a rationale for including that experience, if it doesn't really kind of situate itself within your goal, then that's something that maybe you don't put on. I wonder, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, then there was one with, we worked with another job that was just like planning events for the university, but working with all the different schools, representatives from the school. So I think that was relevant for leadership. But Nordstrom, I did deal with a lot of customer service and diversity, so I didn't know if that was a relevant thing to write. It was a
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear the question, and some of the things I like to think about is like the distance of time. So is it over 10 years old?
No,
If
no,
it's
like
not over 10 years
five,
old,
like
yeah,
5.
if it's, I would list it under leadership. And again, just think about making sure that your description is providing a good rationale and connection to your goal.
Okay.
Anybody else have
One more
anything
short
like
question.
to add?
One more short question.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't realize that I missed you.
APA format says double space, but if they're limiting you to like a 1-page or 2-page, just write less or.
So if a specific format is not listed, I would suggest APA format, in which case, yeah, you would follow those guidelines. And if the word count limit is explicitly expressed, you'd follow it. And yeah, you would write less. And that's the point. If you understand that they're reviewing several applications, they were pretty intentional in the setting of word count limits or character limits. So it's your job to meet that limit.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Regarding her other question, did Dr. Gould or Dr. Bader and Dr. Coleman, either of you did you feel like I captured that? Because that was a really
pretty
important
well.
question.
No, that was complete.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question would go to Jemu Miti.
Hi. Yes, you got my name correctly.
Oh.
I'm originally from East Africa, but in Maryland right now.
Okay.
So
Welcome.
my question is, thank you. So if I have education experience as well as professional ICU experience from outside of the US, should I include it in my resume or should I just leave it out?
Is your question about critical care experience, but international critical care experience?
Yes, and also training.
Yeah, I wouldn't see a reason for you to not include it.
Yeah, put it in.
Yeah, I've seen nurses that worked in Canada, that worked in the UK, who put it on their CV. But obviously the most recent experience that you have here in the States, they will review as well because, when they're looking at if you look at the admission criteria, as long as you're satisfying what that ICU experience is, whether a particular unit or minimum 1 year, minimum 2 years, you put that there, but you want to make yourself more what do you call it, more competitive, especially like if you are CCRN, so definitely make sure that you read, like Olivia went over the different websites. Look at the admission criteria. You'll see all of that in there, but make sure you satisfy that you either meet or exceed the admission criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gould, and thank you, Jamu, for your question. We have Ninoska Corona, who is next in the queue to ask a question. Let us know where you're signing in from and then ask your question.
Hi, my name is Ninoska. I'm from Los Angeles, California. One question I had is, I've been a nurse for quite some time, and I've had some volunteer work and maybe some like projects that I've worked on, but they're they're not within the year. Should those be mentioned? Like, let's say if I had like any new grad projects that I worked on formally versus volunteer work that maybe is like 4 or 5 years old. would that be frowned upon, I guess, to mention those things? Or how recent are we looking for volunteer work and extracurriculars?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Dr. Gould, Dr. Coleman, or Dr. Bader?
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't leave it out. I think, especially in your CV, as long as you're accurate as far as like the timing of when it happened and you're just kind of, and if it's, describing what it is. For me, I had some, I thought my application was lacking volunteer experiences, but then I mentioned in my interview about taking care of my grandmother who was sick, at the time and being with her, and like that counted for them. They thought that, I think that was definitely relevant. It might not have been, organization per se, but I think even things that you do in the community, things for your family member, for neighbors, even that can be more informal. You can be a little bit creative as far as kind of your experiences with volunteer, but I would mention it. Yeah, I wouldn't leave it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's a really excellent question. I'm glad that you asked it. I would be surprised if other folks with us today didn't have a similar question. And also just to kind of put a year out there in the mix, I generally think anything within 10 years is reasonable. And then the other big idea to remember is just making sure you can speak about it in a way that demonstrates the relevance to your goal. I've said that a bunch of times, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like we have 3 more questions, and then after that, we will actually move on to the next portions of the presentation today to start wrapping up. So actually 4 more, and then after the last 4, we'll wrap up. So the next person is Yaidi. Feel free to unmute and let us know where you're signing in from.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Yadi. I'm from Albany, New York. I am not a nurse yet. I'm a student nurse, my 2nd semester, and I already have the end goal to become a CRNA. So I'm trying to start this as early as possible. I want to know what tips you guys can provide that can align me a little bit more with that goal as I transition from a student nurse to an actual nurse in the hospitals. I hear that you first have to go through the ER and then critical care, but then other people say, you could start at peds and get a whole well-rounded view with that department. I already started, I'm a member of this program. Is there anything else that you guys can contribute to help me align a little bit more with this career?
So just to be clear, you're a nursing student right now?
Yes.
So coming out of school, my first goal would be to get into an ICU if you can. Sometimes they don't take you coming straight out of school, but just go straight into an intensive care unit, because from my understanding, the ED a lot of time doesn't count, like the ER doesn't count. They want to see you in the ICU. And typically the minimal experience that you have to have is just 1 year. So with that being said, I would try to be on committees in the ICU and still do a little bit of community service too, because at the end of the day, they want to see how well-rounded of a person that you are. So that's a good place to start there as far as planning. Anybody else want to add something?
Yeah, I would have responded the same exact way. Like you, Yadi, when I was in nursing school, my goal to be a CRNA was already set. And so granted, it's been years, and I realize the landscape has changed regarding access to enter into practice in the ICU, but whatever opportunities you can find that will get you there sooner rather than later, because that's what you need. So I say go right for the goal. And Amber, you definitely did a great job mentioning committee members. Just anything that you can do that is going to like level up your experience. And where are you in your undergraduate program?
Right now, it's just I'm doing my associates. So I haven't gone through anything else, but right here in Albany, we have a 10-year grace period where we could get our bachelor's, but I'm planning to do that as soon as I finish.
Okay. And then just, start building your network now with nurses in the ICU so that you can understand more about what it means to enter into practice there or eventually transition there. So during clinical rotations, do your best to form professional relationships with the people that you interact with. That'll be helpful.
Yeah, as soon as we got the okay to go back into the OR after the pandemic, I did go through some surgeries, and the first thing I did was shadow the CRNAs and kind of get familiar with their role and what they do, and try to ask as many questions as I can. So it kind of really solidified the goal. But I'm glad that you guys are saying that, because it helps me put everything more into perspective and know that I'm taking the right steps.
Yeah, definitely. And make sure you stay connected with us.
Okay.
And maintain a high GPA.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. That part. Yeah, it's important that you do really well in your science classes. And if for some reason you haven't, then there's always opportunity to retake the ones that they really look for folks
Okay.
having higher grades in. So,
Perfect.
all right. So thank you, Yeti. Next is Skylar Menton.
Hi, I'm calling from Fresno, California. I have a question kind of regarding the personal statement and citations. If we include the information from the college, in the personal statement, do we need to cite it? That was kind of my question.
Okay. So your question is regarding how formal do you need to get in your personal statement if you're kind of
Right.
reiterating information from the school's website? Is that right?
Yes, and do I need a citation page? I also have another kind of follow-up question. Um, is it okay to cite the school has a podcast and I listened to it. It was one of their recommended resources for preparing for CRNA school. So I listened to it, was really inspired by an episode and a particular speaker. Is it okay to reference that speaker and cite that?
Sure. Did anybody want to weigh in on this question?
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, you can cite it, but I don't think it's going to hurt you.
Okay.
I can't say it's going to help, but I don't think it will hurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I threw the question out to my colleagues because my first thought was it's one way or the other.
Either way.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think that there's no points scored by citing, but citing isn't wrong. So, does that make sense?
That makes sense. I just want to make sure it wasn't unprofessional to include a podcast, basically, or
Yeah. No, I hear that. And I think even in the writing, though, you would probably speak about it that way. You'd probably somewhere in the sentences where you're speaking about that, you would mention the name of the podcast or how you accessed it. And so that in of itself is a citation. But, you can also go full formal and follow APA format for citation. For my own personal statement, when I was applying to my PhD program, I did cite references. I didn't know if it was necessary, but I did do that. So I think your question is very relevant and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Did you have a different question or was that it?
Those are the two. I also was just wondering, when you're applying to the programs, is it generally seen better if you apply in the very beginning of the cycle or the end of the cycle? Is there
I don't think that admission committee members are thinking too much about that. I think that they set the timeline for what it is if there's a hard and fast application deadline. Personal example, I submitted my application to the PhD program that I'm in on the day that it was due, but it was on time. So I don't think there's any thought given to that. I think if you're seeking to submit an application after the deadline, then yeah, that's not going to work out for you. But just don't overthink the deadline. Just meet the deadline.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
You're welcome. Next, we have Janae or Janai D.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, it was Janae. You got the first one right.
Okay, thanks, Janae.
I have two questions. So Dr. Gold was just speaking to that gentleman about delaying the application. For me, I won't hit a year until I think literally before the application deadline to even sit for the CCRN. I'm going to the October diversity 3-day symposium, but I guess my question would be the same thing. Like, do I delay my application because I would be hitting my year right before the 2 schools I would be able to apply for?
Dr. Gould, you want to take this question? Are you still on the call? All right. Is Lena with us still? No? Okay. I think that her advice still applies here for you too, Janae.
Okay. Okay.
If you consider that, as you mentioned, you just be hitting your year, many of the
Right.
schools are admitting a year or even 2 years out. I'm not sure if
Okay.
schools are admitting further than that out, but I think if you're coming with strong experience, strong letters of recommendation, you're working in an ICU in which you can demonstrate high volume, high acuity, they'll realize that you're still going to get more years of experience before you actually matriculate. So I wouldn't delay. I never
Okay.
suggest to anyone to delay unless they're like, I just graduated, I'm just starting.
Right.
Then they may, you're sort of going to be spending a lot of time applying to maybe get put to the side and told, hey, come back when you've had at least a year under your belt. So
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I have one more question. So I'm like 7 months in as a SICU nurse, but I've already been floated many times to like CT or like MICU. I'm originally a SICU nurse. How do I put that in my resume? Because technically I was not hired as like a CT nurse or a MICU nurse, but I have been floated. I'm getting this like experiences with open hearts and things along that line. I don't want to put like CT ICU nurse because that's not technically where I was hired for, but I do get floated and numerous amount of times so far.
Right. Yeah, I think that you're sort of already on track with describing it that way. Um, you would definitely list the ICU that you are staff in,
Mhm.
and then be creative about how you describe your experiences. And maybe, if you're floated as part of another way you can call yourself, like, float list, I'm not sure how it's structured, but you can think about that and describe it just as you did here, just, and then give some numbers to maybe how often you're floated, how often
Okay.
you're taking care of certain types of patients, so that anybody reading your resume can get a clear picture of what you're trying to portray.
Okay. That was all the questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, so the next person up, I believe, is Victoria, and Victoria will be the last question.
Hi. My question is about DNP project ideas. I've noticed a number of schools ask you to submit kind of a succinct idea that you're proposing, and I'm curious if there's a format for that you've seen that was sort of the most effective way to present your project.
Can
Doesn't
Dr.
Lena do a whole
Gold- yeah.
presentation about that? Is there a presentation somewhere?
Yes. Yep. Dr. Gould has a really extensive presentation that is offered at the in-person events.
Oh.
But I think your question is looking at more of how are you supposed to be doing sort of like a mini proposal within your personal statement? Am I getting at your question correctly?
Yeah, pretty much. I've seen some sort of ask you to incorporate it into your application, and others it's like a separate essay that I think you would submit like on its own page.
Okay, yeah. I think that if you kind of zoom out and think about the fact that the admissions committee members understand that not everybody is going to have a concrete idea, but they just want to, my understanding is they want to understand like what you generally are interested in. And if there is a prompt for the DMP capstone project ideas, maybe just follow what they're asking for. If they're asking for a broad representation of what you're interested in, then that's what you'd write about. I don't know that you would have to worry about having a fully fleshed out idea.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Olivia, can I add into that?
Oh, yes, please do.
Okay, so at from I believe it was early February, mid-February or early May, we had a diversity CRNA boot camp. And in the boot camp, we have a diversity CRNA, a DNP/DNAP project idea presentation that also follows through. We have 5 in-person diversity CRNA information sessions and airway workshops. And we go over pretty extensively the different ideas that nurse anesthesia students can consider for a nurse anesthesia program. But for the application, what you can do, and the thing is that you don't have to commit to a specific topic at the time of application. Okay. But you're applying for a DNP, or if it's VCU or another school like that, or a DNAT program, you should have some sort of idea of what you might go into. For example, if you work CVICU, you can simply say something that in regards to being closely in proximity of something like that. You want to do it cardiac anesthesia related. Or if you're interested in the Black maternal mortality, you may want to do something about OB anesthesia in relation to that, but you don't necessarily have to commit to your DNP project at the time of application. Once you're in the nurse anesthesia program, a lot of things will change. You will be introduced to a lot of anesthesia content. You may even change your idea. You may have an initial idea at the very beginning, but once you start at nurse anesthesia, you may want to do something that's regional anesthesia based, So you still have opportunity to grow in the nurse anesthesia program and to change your mind, but you should have some idea about what exactly you want to do. The thing is this, on social media, I put out there all the time a lot of the graduates that just finished completed programs from across the country. Most of the times I also put down the title of their DNP projects. Pay attention to that, okay? So you'll be able to see what different type of projects that are out here. So, just to let everyone know, anyone that's registered going to any of the diversity meetings will have a hour-long presentation about DNP project ideas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Dr. Gould. And then on that same line, I'd like to also mention that the Diversity CRNA Vimeo channel has the same presentation available for viewing. So, okay. I understand that there are several other folks that have questions in the chat. Before we end today, I'll make sure I drop my email in the chat. You're welcome to reach out that way because I don't want to run out of time to move forward. So thank you all for each of you that have spoken forward with your questions. It's been wonderful to engage with you. We're going to move on. So we are approaching the end of our time together. But before we conclude, I want to make sure that I share some additional information with you. I'd like to spotlight our fabulous and phenomenal Dr. Amber Coleman. Dr. Coleman is a nurse anesthetist and an alumni of Virginia Commonwealth University's nurse anesthesia program, and she has been a CRNA for 5 years. She's also a children's book author, and we'd love for her to share a bit more about her journey and her book with all of you.
Oh, thank you, Olivia. That was so sweet. Thank you. But I wrote Amber Dreams of Anesthesia. It is a children's book about a little girl named Amber who discovers a pathway to nurse anesthesia. And through that, she discovers how important it is to develop a plan in order to follow her goals. I wrote this book because as a young Amber, I didn't have much inspiration. And as a kid, I didn't have a guide to what success looked like. So I wanted to show kids what success and inspiration could look like. Also, I wanted to expose the youth to a lucrative career that is rarely talked about or even heard of. I also wanted to do my part in diversifying the nurse anesthesia profession by planting seeds early in not in only all children, but in specifically children of color, because I believe that early exposure is critical to not only envisioning, but planning and succeeding. So that is why I wrote Amber Dreams of Anesthesia. Thank you so much, Livia. If you guys feel so inclined to support, you could just search up Amber Dreams of Anesthesia. You could find my website online, and I'll type my social media handles in the chat. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amber, so wonderful to hear from you always.
Thank you.
Hang on a second. We have a poll here that you all are responding to. Sorry, I'm a little, I'm a little discombobulated. Okay, so all right, I'm not sure how to move forward with this, so it's kind of blocking my screen. I apologize for the interruption. Friends, hang on a moment. So Diversity CRNA is a dynamic community of professionals, and we're here to support you. Get to know us better and stay connected, and be sure to check out our website. It's there for you on the screen, diversitycrna.org. Specifically, as an organization, Diversity CRNA exists to inform, empower, and mentor underrepresented nurses and nursing students with vital information guiding their transition into graduate nurse anesthesia education. We are building community and expanding networks while bringing diversity to the nurse anesthesia workforce. Diversity CRNA has a tradition of forging long-lasting bonds that will support your professional development. Being a part of Diversity CRNA really feels like you have joined a big family of folks striving toward their goals and having an impact within an amazing profession. So become a member and stay connected. As part of the award-winning immersion model for diversifying nurse anesthesia programs, Diversity CRNA hosts several in-person events each year. Please check out diversitycrna.org. You can also scan the QR code on your screen, and it's there that you'll find information about upcoming events at universities nationwide. The last two events at Duke University and Fairfield University each have spots available. We have officially sold out for the University of Pittsburgh and Rosalind Franklin University events. There is a lot more information available to you if you subscribe to the Diversity CRNA YouTube channel. And you can support the Diversity CRNA mission through a couple of ways. You can purchase from our fundraising store. There are several items available for purchase. And if you plan on attending an in-person event, it's nice to come prepared with a fresh Diversity CRNA t-shirt or a sweatshirt. And finally, we're super excited to share the launch of our new merchandise store. We have brand new Diversity CRNA gear that is only available online through our website. So be sure to check it out. So in conclusion, I would like to thank you all for being here today with us. It's our honor to be here to support you, and we hope that you'll stay connected to us. Stay well and take care.